Hey everybody, my name is Joe and we are back on the BJJ Fanatics podcast and we are joined today by Paul Schreiner. How are you doing today, Paul?
I'm great. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. This is exciting for me because this is the first time we talked to somebody before his products come out. But I was so excited about these, and I think you're such a respected teacher that I really wanted to make sure people got an idea about some of the series that we have upcoming with you. I think it's going to be a great time. First question, Paul. I know you mentioned you're in Montana. Are you there teaching, or what's going on?
No, I'm here more or less just to not be in New York and be stuck in my apartment. But I'm staying at a friend's ranch for a while, and I've been alternating camping and fly fishing and stuff too. That's my other, big passion outside of jiu-jitsu is surfing and fly fishing. So
you grew up surfing, right? When did you get started surfing?
I did. I started body surfing and boogie boarding and stuff when I was like probably 3 or 4, and then moved to surfboard. And I grew up in Santa Cruz, so that's always been a big part of my life.
Is that what led you to jiu-jitsu? Because that's always such a stereotype, the intersection of those two.
More or less. I think it definitely had a big influence. I met a lot of people that helped me in surfing. I never have, obviously, don't have a career or anything, just as a hobbyist, but I met a lot of people that gave me a lot of guidance and help in surfing through jiu-jitsu. But I already surfed before that, and what brought me to jiu-jitsu more than anything was I wrestled for 1 year in high school, and I started wrestling I wrestled my junior year, and then my senior year I did abroad. And when I came back, I wanted to pursue wrestling, but there wasn't really there's not really a path if you wrestled, 1 year to go wrestle in college or whatever, especially in Santa Cruz. So I had some experience with jiu-jitsu. Like I'd taken a few classes at like a local gym that offered it for free. And I was like watching the first UFC. So this is 95, 96, 97, like in there. I think I actually walked into a jiu-jitsu school for the first time in 96, I believe. And then, so it was more like, like many people in my generation, it was the first UFC and the first UFCs that brought me into jiu-jitsu. And, I already knew I had a passion for grappling from my year wrestling. And I wasn't, a good wrestler by any means. I started late, but I did have a great coach. My coach was Jimmy Walker, who I think he was like assistant coach at Stanford for a while. He wrestled under Schultz at University of Wisconsin and was kind of part of that Fox catcher group and stuff. So I had, really technical coaching, and like it kind of, I think, like affected my approach to all grappling, like starting under Jimmy. He was really my first grappling coach of any kind,
So that's something you really try to put forward with people, is that technical style, because in these series you pack a ton of detail, a ton of technique in, and so that's obviously something that's really important to you. And that's where that started with Jimmy, is trying to put that forward.
I think so. Yeah. With Jimmy Walker. Yeah. He's just a super technical coach. And then, that's just always like the way my mind works and what I've been drawn to. And I think I'm better at that aspect of coaching than some of the other aspects. And, at Marcelo's, I'm more than anything, like I'm just I'm a part of the team, and we each have a role, and that's one of the things I kind of embrace as my role is kind of helping people dive deep and understand the technique. And there's other people there's other coaches. I mean, everyone's technical, but there's other coaches that, excel in other things, like, helping people prepare for an individual tournament or the motivational stuff. And, I try to be as complete as possible, but, I feel like helping people understand the technique and like understanding the technique myself on a deep level is really where I've kind of been able to find a home on the team and find value for what I do.
Okay, so I'm trying to imagine this. Tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. And it sounds like you can help people explore what's possible in the position, like here are all your options. And then maybe they'll go to like Marcelo or another coach for that coach to be like, okay, this tournament, do this one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or just like, I kind of, because I've been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time, and I have my game that I play, which is different than often what I'm teaching, is really like focused on half guard and half guard passing. And I would say like I work a lot with the beginning and intermediate students. That's something that I've really learned to embrace, and something that I love to do, and like get people passionate about jiu-jitsu, get them like understanding it, figure out like what works for their body, and like show kind of the breadth of technique. And then we start to dial down and learn the game, like the game that we play at Marcelo's. And Marcelo's obviously great as a coach and as a leader in communicating that with us, and like and developing that really tight, cohesive game. And we have a lot of other coaches too: Joel Burgess, Matthias Deniz, Marcos Tinoco, Scott Kaplan, who are also have their own strengths and within that basic framework. Everyone kind of has I think a different specialty and like a different role. I feel like mine is, again, working with really like the beginner to intermediate students. I also feel like I can help offer different solutions sometimes to advanced students, or people who are suffering with or people who have different injuries or body types that don't allow them to do something exactly the way they think it should be done, and trying to show different technical options.
So let's talk about, you mentioned you're a half guard player and you really spend a lot of time there. One of the series that you have on that's going to be coming up on BJJ Fanatics is your half guard series. Can you tell people a little bit, if they buy this series, kind of what they can expect to learn from this?
Yeah, so I really start the series with like more of what I would consider like defense fundamentals from half guard, and understanding how to manage that position when we're on the bottom, when we don't have an underhook. That's something that I think is often overlooked, and in the way that I conceive of jiu-jitsu is everything it's safety first, right? Every position is depending on the context, it's like you have to worry about safety. Can you be damaged? Can something happen to you in that situation where you can't continue the match? Like, so in jiu-jitsu sport, that means like, can I be submitted from here, basically? Or can I be put on the path that's going to lead to the submission? And, in self-defense or MMA, Vale Tudo, maybe could I be hit here or slammed or submitted, whatever the context is, like, and so first you have to identify safety, and then it's understanding about how to kind of stabilize the position and manage the position and adjust the position and improve it. And then we can start looking to get ourselves on track to either look for submissions from that situation, or to improve our position to a point where we have submission options.
I think that's fantastic. And if people want to look for this, they can search for Connected Reaction Half Guard Series, coming up soon on BJJ Fanatics. By the time you're listening to this, it might already be out. That title, Connected Reaction, when we bring in an instructor, sometimes we will give them like an overarching series title. And for this, it's Connected Reaction. Can you tell me a little bit about what that means to you?
Yeah, that's just a term that I kind of started to relate to jiu-jitsu, like in terms of, what I consider good jiu-jitsu, basically, or high quality jiu-jitsu. And that is like that what we're doing is based on our opponent's reaction. I think that overall, the idea of jiu-jitsu is we use our opponent's reaction against them. and we use everything they do against. We use their strategy against them. We use, you know, the physicality of their movement against them. We use the momentum in where their weight is against them. So it's basically like that. Our jiu-jitsu always is connected to what our opponent's doing, and that's, you know, again, it's like the gentle art or the art of yielding, or however you want to, you know, translate what jiu-jitsu even means. But that there's something in there about the merging of force with our opponent's reaction, and that's where so much of the efficiency in jiu-jitsu comes from. And so and then the other part of that is that our jiu-jitsu needs to be connected to itself, and like our moves need to connect. And that's something that I really focus on with beginning and intermediate students, is to start to see and start to be able to understand connections. And that's going to, you know, lead to ability to transition, and ability to kind of think more globally about jiu-jitsu and apply concepts and kind of put your own spin and understanding on things. So it refers to, you know, our connection to our opponent, our jiu-jitsu's connection to itself, and like how moves need to connect. A perfect example is like, you know, our sweep needs to connect seamlessly to our guard pass. If you look at every elite player, their sweeps and guard passes are intimately connected, right? There are many players that are like literally the same position, you know, if it was switched top and bottom. You know, Bernardo Faria is a perfect example of his, you know, the way he plays deep half with the lapel. Oftentimes it's like, it's literally the same position. If you were to be on top, that's his you know, his heavy over under pass. If he's on the bottom, that's his deep half position. And then I think that the third aspect of the connected reaction is just the connection part, which is that we have to really be like connected to ourselves. And that's, you know, when we're to apply jiu-jitsu at a high level. And so much of it is, you know, that's internal work that each one of us has to get to that place to like understand how to be in our body, understand how to command our body to move, and to kind of find that intelligence that we have kinesthetically, and be able to apply that.
I think that's so fantastic. And I think people are going to pick up on that as they go through this series. There's so much of that included that I think it's great for those intermediate students. It's great for the beginner students, like you mentioned, but even advanced players, I think, are going to get plenty from it. The second part of this series that I wanted to ask you about was the closed guard series, connected reaction, clinch closed guard. Can you tell me what a clinch closed guard is? Is that just closed guard by a different name, or is that a special variation?
Yeah, I mean, essentially it's closed guard by a different name, but it's, you know, a closed guard is a version of a clinch, right? With our legs, in kind of a typically low energy situation, because we have most of our back or our side on the ground. And I think, you know, the clinch is, it's basically like an underhook and a you know, a grip that clinches the shoulder and head and controls the space. And also, I mean, I don't know why I'm giving the visual here.
Yeah, almost like a head pinch, right? Like an overhook and an underhook.
Yeah, or like a pinch headlock kind of situation.
Like from the front, you're saying, kind of.
Yeah, and so we can find a lot of leverage to turn the angle of our opponent's shoulders from that position. We have another pathway to the back, which is to go under the elbow line to sneak to the back. And then we use our opponent's reaction against them. And, you know, the way I conceive of closed guard, again, it goes back to the safety position submission paradigm, is that, you know, the most important thing is to be safe. So in self-defense, that means controlling posture. In, you know, jiu-jitsu sport, that means not allowing someone to open your guard if you don't want to open it on your terms, right? When you've already won the grip exchange or whatever. So if we, you know, that's where the danger is going to come from in a jiu-jitsu sport context, a context with no strikes, is that the person opens your guard, they either attack your legs or they pass your legs and put you in a dominant position. But regardless, they're going to have to open your guard first, right? So we break their posture where they don't have that option. After the posture is broken, we try to shift the burden of control and management of that posture from the arms to the legs. So to do that, we create an angle where we can maximize the surface area of our legs, so we can increase the friction and project weight through our legs to hold our opponent's posture down. And as our opponent tries to remedy that and, correct their angle or try to push up and regain posture, they begin to give us targets of attack. And basically it's going to be where they put their weight to bring to recover their posture is where we attack, right? We could also get into why having an angle is beneficial, et cetera. And, it's not reinventing the wheel. This is all, this is why closed guard is effective. This is why closed guard is effective in, against other fighting styles when no one knew jiu-jitsu. This is why you still see closed guard used at a high level. It's just there's a spin on it, understanding the power that we can get from that kind of underhook front, pinch headlock position with that clinch, and how we can use that clinch to transition from closed guard to half guard to butterfly guard to different sweeping and submission opportunities.
It seems like for all of your series, there's always different places to go. You know what I mean? I'm looking at your half guard series, and it throws in reverse de la Hiva. It throws in, it's not just staying in one static position. It puts in Jedi mind trick. It puts in, it's a lot of options. It sounds like that's something you favor very heavily, making sure people have options in their positions.
Yeah, I think it's understanding I think that's just good jiu-jitsu too, is understanding what can happen in a position, and that you have a solution ahead of time, and you can anticipate what your opponent's possible reactions are and use those against them, like in any grappling sport. And I always say, if there's a superpower in jiu-jitsu, it's anticipation. And so if you really understand the position, and you can start to anticipate their the full array of their possible reactions, we can use those against them better. And I got a little off topic, or I just went a little long on the half guard explanation, but I also wanted to mention that, I start with the overhook, defensive, understanding fundamentals of how to survive and be comfortable in that position. And then we start to get into the underhook, and almost like a Lucas Leach style deep underhook half guard. I play it slightly different, I think. And then from there, how to integrate the more modern approach to jiu-jitsu of, back takes, leg drags, barambolas, having that game connect with a half guard game, which I think for a lot of people who aren't so comfortable inverting, who are maybe a little older, or something, for example, it gives them an entryway into that game from a tighter, more controlled place where you have more, surface area of your, connected to your opponent's body, to start to chase those technique chains.
I love the quote, anticipation. The only superpower in jiu-jitsu is anticipation. I think that's really well said. How do I build anticipation in jiu-jitsu?
I think first is understanding, right, we have to have a cognitive understanding of what we're doing, right? It can't just all be an accident, but then that has to become kinesthetic. It has to get in our body, and we get that, from drilling, from specific training, and from open training. I don't think there's really that much, wiggle room in terms of how we get there. But I do see a transition oftentimes when people they start, just training, and they just want to train, and they stop doing that exploration, in those positions that are going to show them what other reactions they need to work on. So I think specific training that's not at 100% intensity. And I'm not a big fan of flow rolling, but I think it's understanding how to focus your training. That's a problem when we're learning, because it's everything is about winning. But if you're winning every exchange and every round, you're not growing as an athlete. You're not going to develop those feelings of anticipation, to understand, like, understanding the timing, understanding those cues, those like physical cues of like the weight shift, how the structure of our opponent's body is going to change, and then how we feel that. One of the things that, so there's that transition that has to go from like a understanding of how the mechanics of how something works and the physics of our bodies and how they work, to like, how does that translate to feel, and what are those physical cues that I'm going to be able to start to anticipate from, I think like that first, I mean, it's pretty old now, but that first Archie Suave DVD that I think had Marcelo, I can't remember the other people on it. I used to just always watch that Marcelo part. Is before I even trained with him, I think. And it was, he talks about how, oftentimes in training, you have to let someone out of a position that you've won, so you can start to study how people are going to escape. And that way you can start to connect and expand your jiu-jitsu. Again, to going to specific training, but where you allow things to happen, you can explore and start to explore details, potential reactions.
Why aren't you a fan of flow rolling?
I just think I think it can be very unfocused. I think that once you like achieve a pretty high level of understanding and practical application of jiu-jitsu, you'll find like opportunities for flow rolling in a real role, where you can start to feel, like yourself and your opponent keep tracking you keep tracking to the same situation, and you both are like figuring it out, and there's like a give and take there. But I think that most of the potential benefit of flow rolling is basically lost, and just devolves into, people showing off what they could do, or, just like a bunch of nonsense that's not super connected to what their opponent's doing. I prefer, rather than flow rolling, is training with someone who's less experienced than you, so you can kind of really, kind of crank up your powers of anticipation and feel things coming, and like when someone's, not as experienced and not as polished. And again, not in like an abusive way or anything, but like, it's really important to train with people where you can be ahead and direct that role and anticipate and track people into a certain, situation that you're trying to work on or not. Like, Marcelo doesn't do a lot of like repetitional drilling in his, for himself when he's training. But if you watch him train, you'll see, like, I mean, it's impossible not to see like what he's working on, because you'll see him with every skill level of training partner. Like, you see him like tracking always to the same position, and he's figuring it out, and then deleting what he thinks doesn't work, and working on and kind of elaborating on what does.
I think
so that's the kind of like more focused rolling. I think that, the answer to the question is I think a lot of flow rolling lacks focus.
I think that makes a ton of sense. So as we've touched on a few times, you're a teacher at the Marcelo Garcia Academy in New York. When did that begin? When did you start instructing at Marcelo's?
I moved in 2010. And so I think I did a couple stints a bit earlier. And the academy opened in, I think, fall or winter of 2009. And I had come in fall of 2009 to be a training partner for Marcelo for Abu Dhabi. So I was out for a couple weeks, and then Marcelo Tachi and Josh, the other partner in the business, was there. They asked me if I wanted to come out and be be one of the first professor other than Marcelo at the school, and I just opened a school at Kaijin MMA in Santa Cruz, California, with one of my first coaches, Garth Taylor. And so I left Santa Cruz and left that school that was like just really starting to do well about a year and a half after we opened, and made the move to New York to teach at Marcelo's.
when you get there and you're starting to instruct under Marcelo Garcia every day, is there anything about learning from him, or how did your game change when you started teaching under Marcelo's? How did that begin to change you?
Well, a lot of it, I think, is just like, was like, you know, Marcelo, as we know, has like one of the best examples of like, really like a efficiency in jiu-jitsu, and like he does what works. He kind of cuts what doesn't. And so he has a very direct approach. He also has a jiu-jitsu that's like, it's not so counterattack oriented. It's like he goes out and gets you and puts you in a situation where you have to, you know, you have to move, and then uses those reactions against you. It's really about taking the initiative. So that was, I think, you know, a bit of an adjustment period for me, and like learning to you know, focus on those aspects in my jiu-jitsu. I'd already been training with Marcelo for quite a bit. At that point when I moved, I'd been like, you know, every time I competed or if he had a big tournament, usually I'd go out to be a training partner, and that had gone on for 3 or 4 years prior to me moving out to New York. So I was already relatively familiar with that. And then I think my teaching style changed. I think I you know, for the better. Like I became able to start seeing jiu-jitsu and understanding jiu-jitsu in a clearer way, and communicating that in a clearer way. You know, in a way that more people in the room would grasp, rather, you know, so I could speak, like learning to speak like a more concise, but at the same time like generalized language to convey what I was trying to get across about a technique. And then I really started to focus on, you know, teaching like, you know, the foundational fundamental basics, but then 2, learning how to teach a lot of Marcelo's game, and, you know, learning how to teach it the way that, you know, that he expects it to be taught, and the way he understands jiu-jitsu. So that was those. I mean, I'm still learning a lot about that, but those first couple of years were like, you know, probably like being in grad school or something, where it was, you know, you have like a pretty good handle on the body of knowledge, but at the same time, it's like there's a lot to polish.
You just got to stay one lesson ahead of them, right?
That's right. That's right.
What was it like training with Bernardo when he was in New York?
I mean, I would say more than anything, it was just fun. Like Bernardo he's such a character, and he's so hardworking, and so like, he's so fun to be around, and sincere, and like has such good energy that like you can't be in a bad mood and be like, you know, training with Bernardo and hanging out with Bernardo at the gym. I saw like a huge jump from when he was already a champion of like world champion and Pan Ams and everything, like when he came to the gym, but like I like that jump that he made in his technicality and his like teaching ability while he was at the gym was super impressive too. So it was cool to see someone who was already at such a high level and see how much better they got, you know, through their hard work, and you know, I think and his openness to everyone, you know, to input. You know, sometimes I would show him a technique and he would never, you know, I mean, I never won a world championship, and, you know, he was always completely, excuse me, open to coaching. He, you know, he was doing judo, cross training. He was wrestling, and you saw I think that last year or 2 of his competition, like once he really was kind of was able to apply the wrestling that he had worked so hard on, is like finishing those singles and doubles, coming up and wrestling up out of those half guard positions, oftentimes with the lapel. It's like he was impossible to deal with after that, you know. Still is, yeah.
Still a total pain in the butt to roll with Bernardo Faria.
Yeah,
sure.
no, I'm a big fan of Bernardo's jiu-jitsu. Just pressure, you know, head position. You're carrying his weight the whole time. And everything like in his game, like fits together, there's no daylight between his sweeps and his pass and his guard pull and his back takes and, his omoplata. It's like everything is, again, like that's I think the hallmark of good jiu-jitsu is how connected it is.
I agree. And talking about connections, I want to talk about the third series that you've shot with us, Connected Reaction, your no-gi passing series, which we're all definitely excited about. Can you let people know kind of what they could expect out of this no-gi passing series?
Yeah, so in broad terms, it's about forcing someone to half guard and taking away their mobility and passing from the half guard and kind of passing their guard one half at a time, so we can take away their danger. A big part of the danger factor, because usually our most submissions in jiu-jitsu require both legs or a pretty high degree of movement there. And so like when we can flatten someone in the half guard and we can start to immobilize them, we have a much easier time passing high level guards. So that's again, that's one approach that people have been taking in jiu-jitsu for a long time. There's nothing new about that, that's Marcelo's blueprint for passing the guard, for passing high level guards, is to force half guard. And in my opinion, Marcelo has the best half guard passing in the world, and the most precise half guard passing in the world. And so I have a different body type. I have I came to Marcelo's style of jiu-jitsu with a different background already. And so I try to show the basics of our understanding of how to pass the half guard, and then a lot of the variations that I've developed and ways to think about, that position that might be a little different.
So it's interesting to me that you're filming with us and explaining not only how to pass the half guard, but also we have a series on how to play the half guard. Do you think having both of those as staples in your game kind of makes the other stronger, or do they feed into each other at all?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that you always, you have to understand both sides to really understand a position, especially, being in a dominant position in half guard is one of the highest percentage positions to come up on top, to reverse our opponent and get on top. And I think being in a dominant position on top of the half guard is the best position to pass a very high level guard. The problem, with some high level guards, if you see someone like, Michael Zenga or Rafa Mendez or, whatever, you're like, why don't you just force half guard? It's like, okay, put that person in the half guard. It can be very difficult to force someone into half guard. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't negate how effective that position is, once you're there. And it doesn't negate that. It doesn't mean that we should look for other options necessarily. I mean, we have to have other options too. The half guard passing relates, very well to other styles of passing, especially when someone, really starts to force the defense and prevent the half guard, other options open. And then I would say more broadly that I think if you look at the best guard players at the lower belts, they become the best passers at black belts. And I think that, there's a reason for that. It's, you have to really understand the intricacies of the guard to be able to anticipate, because again, it goes back to, to anticipation oftentimes to build pressure and make our moves connect and apply, movements to layer our offense in passing. And you really have to be able to understand the guard and the feel of the guard and understand your opponent's objectives to be able to pass a very high level guard. I don't think you see many, if any, like really precise high level guard players or guard passers who didn't come up as guard players.
That's really fascinating. I'd never considered that and I'm gonna have to go back and look, but I think that's generally true. When I think about that, that sounds true to me. Crazy.
Yeah.
You're somebody who has been in jiu-jitsu since it was much more in its infancy, certainly in America at least. And you've seen a lot of rises, a lot of falls, a lot of trends in jiu-jitsu. When you see something coming along that's trendy for whatever reason, do you take the time to try to learn it? Do you take the time just to try to learn how to like not get stuck in it? You know, what do you think when you see a trend like a berimbolo or the leg locking trend come up? Is that something you try to go out and study, or
Yeah,
how do you deal with that?
yeah, I do. I mean, I do try to study it. You know, it doesn't mean I'm great at either of those skills, particularly leg locking. But yeah, I think that when we start to identify a trend and realize that it's real and that it's working at a high level, or even, you know, if you can identify something that's working that you think has the potential to work at a high level, yeah, I try to learn it. So I do a lot of drilling still, you know, like I was drilling berimbolo variations yesterday morning at 6 a.m. So I try to do a lot of drilling and a lot of trying to figure things out just to stay up to date also as a coach and be, you know, if that's the direction the sport's going, you can't be, you know, you can't be 155-pound purple belt and compete at the world championships and not understand how to address the berimbolo, you know, I think from both sides of the coin. And so if I'm going to be part of a coaching team that, you know, our goal is to create or create an environment that allows people to get as good as they want to get, you know, that allows people to get to a level so they can go have success at the world championship. And we need to understand those options, even though that, you know, the berimbolo probably isn't in our A game so much in the jiu-jitsu that we teach. It integrates with what we teach. You know, we do teach a lot of leg entanglements, primarily from the single leg X. And so we have, you know, inside out bolos and a few, I think I show a couple of versions on the half guard, and I think on the one or two on the half guard passing as well. So I think it's super important to follow trends and to stay up to date as a coach. Yeah, I mean, otherwise you just end up like bullshitting, you know.
Yeah,
and then you fall behind. So if you know, it's a race. The kids, the brown belts, some of the black belts at our academy, so some of the blue and purple belts, I mean, they drill 4 or 5 hours a day. I mean, Gianni Grippo, he's drilling. Nick Salas, they're drilling, you know, anywhere from 3 to 5 hours a day in addition to the classes they're taking. Like, just that volume of work, it's so hard to keep up with, you know. But if you don't try, then there's, you know, you're gonna fall behind faster.
Man, I can totally appreciate that. It must be such a bear trying to roll with some of these guys. Like, I imagine like rolling with like a guy like Mateus Diniz must just be like miserable.
Oh, it's awful. Yeah, but Mateus trains nice with me, you know. Like
You stay on his good side?
I stay on his good side. Yeah, he trains nice with me, and you know, Mateus is like, you know, he's a stud. He's really his jiu-jitsu has a lot of physicality, but he at the same time he's very precise. He has, like, you know, some of the best timing, if not the best timing, in his guard passing, like in terms of like his direction changes and you know, the way he connects that kind of passing from the outside with mobility and you know, staying behind the knees. Like, he's incredible at that game. So like I always learn a lot with Mateus, and a lot of the guard that the version of the De La Hiva or reverse De La Hiva that I play, that I started coming up with even before I moved to New York as a way to protect my knee, because I have a bad knee. A lot of that was developed because of Mateus, like specifically because of him, because it was so hard for me to contain him. And that was one way that I could stay sticky and try to slow him down and at least like force him to play half guard with me, which isn't always good for, you know, for you on the bottom, is like to force Mateus into a top half guard position. But that's my chance to slow him down in our, our personal training.
So as you've been so generous with your time here, Paul, just another question or two. Somebody else that I am pretty sure that you've trained with in the past is Dave Camarillo, who we just put out a series with, the Arm Lock Obsession, showing his entire arm locking system, the Armbar JiuJitsu Academy. What's it like training with Dave?
Dave's hard because Dave has an extra gear. Like, you think you're in the same way Marcelo does, there's like, you think you're doing good, and then they have an extra gear or two where they can go and you can't. And Dave, I think, he like takes that away from himself on purpose in training. Oftentimes he doesn't like allow himself to use his speed. I used to do a judo class with Dave for a bunch of years when he would teach a judo class at American Kickboxing Academy, and I would go train with Dave there and in his jiu-jitsu class, and be a training partner for him and for some of the fighters there. And then I started coaching there as well. And one of the members of the U.S. Olympic judo team told me that there were people in the world at Dave's weight that were potentially better than him at judo, but they'd never seen anyone faster. And I don't think there was anyone better at the integration of Newaza with Tachiwaza. I don't think there was a better arm lock in judo ever, or jiu-jitsu for that matter. So he was just so hard to deal with, because like he could fly, he could throw his hips from anywhere, and like they're magnetized to your elbow, and he's marking your elbow from the second he touches your gi. So he's very hard to deal with. And I had to do, a lot of the way that I pass guard and the way that I try to communicate passing guard comes from my time at AKA and my training with Dave. Because with Dave for his judo and his flying attacks, and with the fighters for, not getting hit on my feet, I really focus on that other dimension of guard passing that's often lost is that you have to keep someone on their back. You have to keep someone in the bottom position. Oftentimes, like we're only focusing on guard passing. Like, we want to pass their guard, or we want to like maybe pass their guard and use the guard pass as a way to chase a submission, or, use the submission as a way to chase the guard pass. But the third dimension is that we have to keep someone down, because it changes when you start dealing with, D1 collegiate wrestlers and above, who they don't care about sweeping you or submitting you from the guard. They're going to get back to their feet. Or like Dave wants to get back to their feet where he can move, and he can move faster than you, and he could outgrip you and throw you and use flying attacks. And those are situations where you have to cover someone. You have to deny them access to their bottom posts. You have to, keep their feet off the floor. Understand how to control their elbows, understand all the different ways they're going to build elevation or create space to scramble to their feet and keep them down. That's something that I don't think so many people are great at in sport jiu-jitsu, because it's oftentimes someone sits guard, and then there's like there's like a handshake contract that, okay, I'm going to play on the bottom until I could sweep you or submit you. You're going to play on top. It's like not that. It's not a scramble the whole time for someone trying to get back to their feet. So I learned a lot from Dave that way. I mean, Marcelo passes the guard incredibly well like that as well. He goes and gets you and keeps you down. You can't get back up to your feet with him. And we do specific training like that in the academy, where, you don't sweep, you're not looking for submissions, you're just trying to get back to your feet from the guard. And our job on top is just to keep someone down.
I love it. I think that makes so much sense. I want to go try that drill with my students right now.
Awesome.
Paul, you have been very generous with your time. I feel like I've learned a lot in this interview. People can go and check out some of your upcoming instructional series on bjjfanatics.com. If for anybody that's listening, we'll have a link in the show notes where you can go and check to see if any of them are out yet. They may not be out by the time you're listening to this, but they're coming out very, very soon. Paul, anything before we go? Anybody that you'd like to thank? Sponsors? Anybody like that? Anything else?
Yeah, I just want to thank you. Thanks, Bernardo, Marcelo, all my training partners and students and teachers. Yeah, I really appreciate the time and opportunity.
Huge honor for me, as they say.
All right, take it easy.